recognized the state of so-called Palestine at the United Nations. And President Trump threatens that bad things will happen to Afghanistan if it does not return a key airbase that Joe Biden gave away. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening, and welcome to the Worldview Report. I'm Brandon House. Leading off tonight, Charlie Kirk's pastor, Rob McCoy, was the first speaker to take the stage at the late conservative activist memorial service that was held at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. He set the tone in honoring Charlie's life as a man on a mission, focused first and foremost on winning souls for his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Before McCoy took the stage, the memorial was kicked off with a bagpipe. It was a performance of Amazing Grace. It was followed by a Grammy-winning Christian singer, Chris Tomlin, performing worship music. This set the tone for the entire memorial service at a jam-packed stadium and overflow venues totaling over 300,000 people. Watch this. The speakers included many prominent friends of Charlie Kirk, including Vice President J.D. Vance. And then the final speaker, President Donald Trump, who honored Charlie as a legendary figure whose values and influence on America and the world will not be snuffed out. The entire event lasted approximately 7 hours. Charlie's wife also spoke and said she has forgiven the shooter who took her husband's life. at the young age of 31. Watch this.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men just like the one who took his life. That young man, on the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him. I forgive him because it was what Christ did and is what Charlie would do. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love. Love for our enemies and love for those who persecute us.
3 left-wing shooters in the span of a week. From the murder of Charlie Kirk to an attack on an ABC affiliate station in Sacramento, California, to the most recent event, a shooting on Saturday at a country club wedding in New Hampshire. This, of course, not counting the transgender killer who murdered 2 children and wounded 18 others at a Catholic school in Minneapolis the week before the Charlie Kirk assassination. In every case, there's been a clear intent of politically motivated violence. Democrats, woke activists, they continue to deny that they have any responsibility. But after a decade of demonizing everyone who disagrees with them and calling them such things as fascists, Nazis, well, isn't this the end result they were really looking for? The suspect in Saturday's country club shooting, well, he's identified as a 23-year-old Hunter Nadi. He was arrested and charged with 1 count of second-degree murder. Witnesses, they heard the man scream, quote, "The children are safe. Free Palestine," end quote. And then he started shooting, killing 1 person and wounding 2 others before he was hit in the head with a chair by a female party member and ran away then with his head bleeding. Watch this.
I heard.
So when you say that he was walking to the party, was this actually at the wedding venue?
No, he was not in the wedding venue. He was in the restaurant. And basically, he must have came through, went right. It looked like a target that he was going right for this person. So I feel terrible for him.
Did he dress him by name? Did you get the sense that they knew who?
Didn't hear anything. He just came out and said.
What he said.
Yeah, what he said was the children are safe and free Palestine.
Authorities said there is no known connection between the shooter and the victims. Interestingly enough, multiple left-wing media outlets did not mention that the shooter attacked a wedding, nor did they mention him yelling, "Free Palestine," in their initial reports. Iran claims it has successfully tested an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time. This was on Friday. A spokesperson jumped on the airwaves there in Iran and claimed during a TV interview on state television, quote, "The night before last, we conducted a security test of an intercontinental missile for the first time, and it was successful," end quote. He said Israel launched devastating air raids against Iran in June, targeting key military and nuclear facilities. U.S. jets also joined in the attack on the nuclear facility at Fordow and Natanz. And they said this military operation was codenamed Midnight Hammer. Donald Trump, he hailed the U.S. strikes as a spectacular military success, claiming that Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities had been completely and totally obliterated. Just over a week ago, Iran said that its stockpile of enriched uranium remained beneath the rubble of the nuclear sites. Iran's foreign minister told the state television that the nuclear materials were all, quote, located under the debris of the bombed installations, end quote. And then he added that Iran's Atomic Energy Organization was, quote, assessing whether these materials are accessible or not, end quote. The fate of the stockpile, it's been a topic of hot debate among diplomats and nuclear experts, with many suspecting that Tehran could have moved the nuclear material prior to the joint Israeli and U.S. strikes. Tehran suspended its cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA. It was after the 12-day war, making it difficult to assess, well, the whereabouts of this nuclear material. And last week, they said those inspectors have been permanently kicked out of the country. The UK, Germany, and France, they cited Iran's failure to allow the IAEA to resume full inspections and clarify the status of the enriched uranium as reasons behind their decision to reimpose UN sanctions. Erika Kirk, the widow of slain Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk, said she will not seek the death penalty against her husband's assassin. In a New York Times article on Sunday, Kirk said she would leave the decision up to the government, as she did not want to have the killer's blood on her hands when she meets her maker. Watch this.
Erika did an interview with the New York Times saying, it came out this morning, saying, for Erika Kirk, a husband's life cut short by the violence he seemed to foresee, saying, I'm a strong believer that this was God's plan, and it's so clear cut. It couldn't be more Charlie. I've had so many people ask, do you feel anger towards this man? Like, do you want to seek the death penalty? I'll be honest, I told our lawyer, I want the government to decide this. I do not want that man's blood on my ledger, because when I get to heaven and Jesus is like, eye for an eye, is that how we do it? And that keeps me from being in heaven, from being with Charlie.
I can't imagine having to have these thoughts, muster these words. Again, this is only 11 days after Charlie was taken from this planet prematurely. So to have these thoughts, to put together sentences like that, it's something as a wife myself, I can't even imagine having to do. Again, while you're trying to mourn, while you're trying to grieve, while you're trying to figure out the business side of things at Turning Point USA, having to think of things like this, it's just a tragic scenario.
But such second nature, her Christian values on display, evangelizing in the New York Times. What is the Christian message of forgiveness and love? We don't believe in eye for an eye. And so I'm touched, and I'm touched that you thought to come on your due date to be with us and celebrate your good friend.
Well, that's who Charlie they are Kirk. As people. It was central to their life, their faith. They were the rarest combination of course, charisma and character. And as you've seen here, just the testament to their faith.
Per the New York Times, in her view, a young but towering spiritual voice was silenced by a young lost soul. Quote, I'm a strong believer that this was God's plan. And it's so clear-cut. It couldn't be more Charlie, end quote. President Donald Trump has expressed he would like the death penalty to be sought for the suspect, Tyler Robinson, as Utah's officials, including the governor, well, they have also said they would seek capital punishment. However, it remains to be seen whether Erika's sentiment will have any influence on this case. We'll keep you posted. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed on Sunday that, quote, there will be no Palestinian state west of the Jordan River, end quote. That was after several countries recognized one, despite the war and the lack of signs of statehood. Netanyahu said in a statement, quote, I have a clear message to those leaders who are recognizing a Palestinian state after the horrendous October 7th massacre. You are rewarding terror with an enormous prize. And I have another message for you. It's not going to happen. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. For years, I have prevented the creation of the terror state against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination and with astute statesmanship. Moreover, we have doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path. The response to the latest attempt to force upon us a terror state in the heart of our land will be given after my return from the United States. Stand by, end quote. Prime Minister Netanyahu, well, he's set to visit the White House on September 29th. The reference to west of the Jordan River, well, it could imply that a Palestinian state might exist east of the Jordan River in what today is the Kingdom of Jordan. Jordan was originally part of the British Mandate of Palestine until it was separated from the western portion in 1922. Some Israelis claim that Jordan is the true Palestinian state. On Saturday, at the United Nations in New York, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia recognized a so-called Palestinian state, and several European countries were to follow. This so-called state, well, it has no border, and many pro-Palestinian activists believe that a purported Palestinian state will replace the state of Israel. Isn't that really the goal? Go read the Hamas charter. The Hostage and Missing Families Forum, which represents the families of the remaining 48 Israeli hostages, 20 are alive, we're told. Well, they condemned countries recognizing a Palestinian state while their loved ones are still being held hostage. We'll be right back after this break. The businessman from Texas that spent years trying to bring the perfect red heifers to Israel is coming to speak in Collierville, Tennessee, outside of Memphis, on Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. They now have sacrificed one of those red heifers. There it is burning. They've now gained 10 gallons of ashes. Why do they need this? Well, the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 19, says that for the purification ceremony, for their temporary tabernacle or full-time temple, they need the ashes of a perfect red heifer. This is the first time this has happened in over 2,000 years. The story is going global. It's highly controversial. In fact, there's even a connection between the attacks on Israel on October 7th and these 5 red heifers. Come and hear him speak live in person, Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Full details, worldviewstore.com, and to get your tickets, worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Welcome back from the break. Thanks for being with us. And it's coming up fast. Our 22nd annual National Worldview Weekend, Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. People are still registering and coming from all over the country. Here in the Mid-South, beautiful Collierville, Tennessee is where it's going to be held. And it is not too late for you to secure a seat and be with us. Now, you can get a ticket for the event at worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. If you cannot be with us in person, but you would like to live stream it or have access to it right after each presentation, pretty quick, we'll be posting these pretty fast, you can join our vault if you're interested, and you'll have access to our entire conference, as well as 35 years of ebooks, audiobooks, documentaries, Worldview Weekend conferences, the past 22 years, and so much more. All of it's available for you. More details are available at worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Hope you can make it. And don't forget that this broadcast and so many of our programs are brought to you as a broadcast service and ministry underwritten in part by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. Foundation helps us push out free programming as a public service, education, and Christian ministry program of the foundation. Worldviewfoundation.com if you'd like to make a tax-deductible contribution. Don't forget our foundation also sponsors our Sunday night church service each and every Sunday night. Last night I was, starting in on Revelation chapter 21. Revelation chapter 21. We spent a lot of time talking about the new heaven, the new earth, and Jerusalem coming down from heaven. think you'll find it quite informative. It's available now on demand, free of charge, at worldviewtube.com. Again, brought to you by our foundation. So thank you for your tax-deductible contribution. We send out tax receipts the first week of every February with our EIN number. So thank you again for your support. Worldview Foundation.com. The track record of the Federal Reserve System has been questionable at best, bailing out the big banks, manufacturing financial bubbles, fueling 40-year high inflation, delivering the highest interest rates in decades. And of course, then there's the constant hemorrhaging of cash. With a track record like this, well, it's little wonder that people are growing increasingly frustrated with this century-old institution that was founded in 1913. Congress giving a federal charter to a group of private banks. In fact, surveys suggest that Americans have little faith in the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. This past month, 2 key surveys were released, and they reveal what the American people really think about the Federal Reserve System and the central bank chief. Here are the results. According to Gallup, only 37% of U.S. adults have a great deal or a fair amount of confidence that Powell will do the right thing for the U.S. economy. This is the second worst reading in modern history. The last time it was this low was in 2014. That's when Janet Yellen was at the helm of the organization. Remember her? A YouGov CBS News poll found that 52% of U.S. adults actually trust the Fed to keep the United States out of a recession. Well, that poll right there shows you just how ignorant most Americans are. 52%, really? Compare that to 26% that responded that they don't trust the Fed at all to keep us out of a recession. And 21%, well, they weren't sure. Wow, take the I'm not sure, add it to the ones that are confident the Fed can keep us out of a recession, and you're talking about well over 75% of Americans that either trust the Fed, well, or they're not sure, which, again, really shows you we're in big trouble. After over 100 years of failed policies by the Fed that I've already enumerated, this number should not be this high. People should either not trust the Fed or they should certainly have an opinion on it one way or the other. And then there's the Post-Federal Open Market Committee policy meeting. It's a big title. And they held a press conference. And there, Jerome Powell, well, he was asked about these polling numbers. You want to know what he said? Well, here it is. Quote, our response is we're going to do everything we can to use our tools to achieve the goals that Congress has given us. And we're not going to get distracted by anything. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep doing our jobs, end quote. In his opening remarks at almost every press conference, Powell, he routinely states that the Fed's mission is to help the American people with the dual mandate of stable prices and maximum employment. But folks, have monetary policymakers actually lived up to their public endeavors, their goals? No. The data says this is not the case. And you don't need data to tell you this. You see it in your insurance bill for your car, your house, your medical bills, your grocery bills, and, well, your kids' education, the cost of that. I could keep going. And now we're seeing it in record high gold prices. Nobody trusts the Fed that is actually a thinking person. And those that are thinking, they're fleeing the U.S. dollar for hard assets because they realize the day of the dollar is numbered. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. Not that it didn't already get started with that last story. The government bureaucracy, also formerly known as the Department of Defense, well, it's cracking down on media coverage, announcing new rules and restrictions on journalists. The Secretary of the new Department of War, Pete Hegseth, he announced on Friday that members of the press operating inside the Pentagon must submit to significantly tightened rules for access and reporting. Those who don't play by the new rules, they will lose access. So what I think the department is really saying here is don't dig too deep. Don't seek out your own independent sources within the Pentagon. The measures, they require journalists to work through official public affairs channels. They have to display their press credentials at all times, And they must accept this fact that possession of unauthorized information, even if it's non-classified, may result in the loss of their press credentials. The policy, well, it was laid out in a memo on Friday, and it really kind of follows restrictions that were introduced earlier this year involving the bombing of Yemen. You see, in May, Hegseth, he directed the Pentagon to impose tighter controls on press activity after a series of leaks that he said endangered operations. I think Hegseth actually has it backwards. If leaks are happening that compromise national security, then he should be cracking down on his own employees who are doing the leaking. I don't think he should be trying to hammer the press from doing its job. Don't you? It's not the press's fault someone's leaking. Hegseth, he was a member of the media himself before he took the job of defense secretary, which I think makes this move even more perplexing. I think he has essentially banned journalism at the Pentagon. I think the implication of his new rules is that reporters covering his massively bloated agency, well, they can repeat what's said by a government lackey. They can regurgitate paragraphs from a government press release, but they are not allowed to talk to actual government policy makers or even report from whistleblowers, apparently. That's not journalism. That's just simply being a stenographer. So, I'm not with Pete Hegseth on this one. You've done some good things as head of the Department of Defense, yep, but this is not one of them. Any news organization that doesn't recall their reporters from the Pentagon in response to this, what I think is an egregious attack on the First Amendment, well, they should be viewed with, well, skepticism at best. Why not cover the agency from the outside? You clearly will not be missing anything by being on the inside, because apparently you're just going to get a seat at a highly orchestrated press conference. You can watch those online and you can get the press release. But in return for having a seat on the inside, you'll now be required to forego your journalistic instincts to dig deeper, to actually investigate. So you simply become a lapdog of the Pentagon, the War Department, and apparently the military-industrial complex. Well, I say no thank you. No thank you. We need journalists, not PR mouthpieces posing as journalists. That's my thoughts. That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for tuning in and supporting the broadcast at worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail, worldviewfoundation.com. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.